Next on Unsolved Mysteries. It started out as a case of arson, or perhaps a robbery. But it turned out to be a double murder with a most unlikely suspect. It's called the Mystery Hum. Thousands hear it. Many are tormented by it. Where does it come from? For Cindy Anderson, it started with disturbing messages from a stranger, then harassing phone calls, and finally, Cindy disappeared. And he helped stop the notorious serial killer called the Nightstalker. But he never claimed his reward. Where is Alejandro Espinosa? Whether it's homicide, fraud, or a missing person, sometimes these cases are solved, thanks to you. I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. Toledo, Ohio. 20-year-old Cindy Anderson has been plagued by a series of frightening dreams. In one episode, the acquaintance she lets in the door betrays her trust.
Where are you taking me?
One morning while I was getting ready for work, I overheard Cindy talking to my mother.
What's wrong?
Mama had a dream last night.
Well, tell me about it.
I do believe that the dreams could have been a premonition of fears that Cindy actually had in her subconscious at the time.
Cindy was employed as a legal secretary and in the mornings usually worked in the office alone. She kept the door locked at all times. A buzzer had even been installed at her desk so that she could alert the shop next door if there was trouble. One day at noon, Jim Rabbit and Jay Feldstein, two of the lawyers, arrived back at their office after a meeting.
Jay and I came back from downtown. We went up to the door and the lights were on, the door was locked. We unlocked the door, went inside, yelled for Cindy, and there was no answer. Hey, Cindy! I started to look around out front. Cindy, when she would leave, would place the phones on hold, and that wasn't done either.
Take a look at this for a second. Look what that page was turned to.
Cindy had left her romance novel open to the only violence scene in the book, where the heroine is abducted at knife point.
So we should call somebody?
It wasn't until really looking at the book, particularly reading the passage in the novel, I just had a sickening feeling that something was wrong.
Cindy was never seen again. There was no body, no farewell letter, no hint where she had gone or why she had disappeared. Were Cindy's dreams premonitions of a terrible fate, or were they just a coincidence? Cindy was raised in a strict religious environment. Her family, boyfriend, and most of her social circle were all devout Christian fundamentalists.
She was a very quiet, obedient type of a girl. She never made waves with either myself or her mother. And she had lots of friends. She was the type of daughter that you just enjoy. I mean, just a beautiful young girl.
At the time of Cindy's disappearance, there were no circumstances in her life that any of us were aware of that would have caused her to have run away. She was looking forward to quitting her job in 2 weeks and going to a Bible college where she would attend with her boyfriend. She was very excited about it.
Just before she disappeared, however, she was becoming like a debutante. She was spending a lot of time on her face and herself, and she'd skip breakfast for this reason, and that may be part of the problem.
Keith, here's some latent prints.
The day Cindy vanished, the police immediately began a search for clues. Cindy's car keys and purse were missing, but the office was undisturbed and there were no signs of a struggle.
Her car was parked in front of the law office. Her bank account, which had a nice substantial amount of money, was never touched. Her Social Security number has never shown up under any other workplace. It's a complete mystery how and why Cindy disappeared.
10 months earlier, Cindy had noticed a disturbing sign near her work. On the wall across from her office, someone had painted the words, "I love you, Cindy," by GW.
There was no other woman named Cindy working in that side of the strip mall that it could have been for, so it was strategically placed, and it really gave us the heebie-jeebies.
The spray-painted sign was visible for about 6 months, and then it was covered up. Within weeks, the same message reappeared. This time, it was even larger.
Cindy tried to figure out who GW could have been, and we couldn't think of anyone at school, at church, in our group of friends, at home, in the neighborhood. So it did bother us a lot.
We attempted to locate people that Cindy would know with those initials. Among the people that were investigated with the initials GW was the maintenance man who had worked for the law firm for some time. He had keys to both doors. In fact, he had keys to all the offices.
But the police found no evidence that the maintenance man wrote the graffiti, and he was never charged.
The day before Cynthia Anderson disappeared, I had been in the law offices to pay off a legal fee. She got a phone call. She kind of reacted like maybe it was obscene or something because she hung up real quick.
It's $30.
And she got another phone call, and the look on her face, still, I can picture it today. She was scared. She was honestly, sincerely scared. It gives me shivers to think of the look on her face. Some kind of problem?
No, it's just been happening lately.
I went home and I called the police department and asked them to do a drive-by and check on her. Something scared the hell out of her, in my opinion.
A month after Cindy vanished, another strange phone call gave police a new lead.
Detective Adams.
In the Cynthia Anderson case.
Who is this?
No, I can't give you my name.
She said that she was scared and she was talking in low whispers.
All I know is I was told she was being held in a basement of a White House.
Can't you give me the address?
She kept saying that she had to go. I kept begging her to stay on the line, give me more information, give me an exact address, something that we could act on.
I've got to go.
A short while later, she again called.
Detective Adams.
Calling again about the Cynthia Anderson case.
I'm glad you called back, ma'am.
The lady mentioned that there was 2 houses side by side owned by the same family, and that the family was out of town. But their son was home, and he was the party that was holding Cindy in the basement. We did check street after street in the north end to see if we could find 2 houses side by side. There's so many that you can't get a positive location of a house.
My hope is that my daughter is alive and well and living a normal life, perhaps with loss of memory. If she herself is out there, we want her to know that we love her, and we certainly want her to come back, whatever the case may be. The door is open. We certainly want anybody and everybody that can possibly help in this situation to do so.
After Cindy's disappearance, a local grand jury indicted 9 people for drug trafficking. Some suspect that Cindy knew one of them and that she was killed after she overheard incriminating comments. No charges were ever filed. If you have any information about the disappearance of Cindy Anderson, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, they torched the crime scene and dumped the bodies. But will they get away with a cold-blooded double murder. Lewis Chapel Mountain, Tennessee, is a place where everyone knows their neighbor and families live in the same town for generations. Two popular residents were Joe Harvey and his wife, Mattie, called Teet by friends. For 35 years, they ran a combination convenience store and automobile repair shop. It was the only place to buy gas or groceries for miles around.
Teet liked to talk a lot, and that was kind of like the community newspaper, in other words, right there. They just knew everybody, and anybody needed help, they would help. It was pretty well common knowledge that they kept cash receipts from the store.
Hey, Patty.
I asked them time and time again not to keep that kind of money around, but they needed a bank account. And Joe, I tried to get him to even get a gun and put in the garage and a station there where he's at, and he wouldn't even do that. Trusted people too much.
Let's go get some supper before you fall asleep
Well,
in front of the TV.
Joe and Mattie were such a fixture that everyone thought that they would be there forever. Then, for the first time in memory, their store was not open at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. A concerned neighbor called the sheriff.
I walked up a little steps like where you go up to the back door, and the handle of the door was unlocked, so I just pushed the door open.
The inside of the house was completely gutted by fire. Joe and Mattie were nowhere to be found.
And I just turned and come back out onto the porch. I discovered blood spots with some hair fragment and flesh. So that gave me a funny feeling that something had really happened at that point.
Agents from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation arrived on the scene. State arson investigators found a 2-gallon gasoline can on the kitchen table.
The investigators found various blood spots throughout the house and on porch and steps leading from the house. The conclusion is obvious. The arson was set for an attempt to cover up crimes that had been committed there. And so with the idea that we had been informed that they did keep large sums of money, first reaction is there had been a robbery.
I thought maybe they might have been kidnapped. I thought maybe they'd went on the Smokies or something like that. But when I got to the mountain and they told me they'd found blood and the house had been burned inside, I didn't know what to think at that point. All I could think about was hoping that they were still alive.
A full-scale search of the area turned up no clues whatsoever. The disappearance of Joe and Mattie left their family and friends stunned. And then only a week later, another member of the Harvey family vanished. 27-year-old Cheryl Holland was Joe and Mattie's niece, and they were extremely close. Cheryl often came to the store for a visit with her young daughter.
Hi, Cheryl. Hey, sweetheart.
Teet could not have loved Cheryl anymore if she had been her own daughter. That's the way she felt about her, and she felt that way about the little girl of Cheryl. She loved that little girl to death. I mean, she thought that little girl was all they were.
A week after Joe and Mattie were last seen, Cheryl's pickup truck was found abandoned at a truck stop 2 hours from home.
Investigators found the truck unlocked. They found keys in the truck, and they found a necklace that has later been identified as hers laying beside the truck. Also, her pocketbook was still in the truck. The evidence they found on the scene would lead a reasonable person to assume there had been an abduction.
What time did you leave Ross, lady?
It's about the middle of the morning on Wednesday.
Investigators questioned Cheryl's common-law husband, Eddie Wooten.
Details about her taking him to Newport News, Virginia. He tells about stopping at a place where they slept, but he can't remember where they stopped. So we kept finding many, many inconsistencies such as that. We have 2 missing people, now we have 3, all out of a very close immediate family, even living next door many times in her life. The favorite niece is missing. There's no money in the house. The arson, the blood, it all bills. And then the question is she really missing? Is she an abductee? Or is she part and parcel of a crime?
Eddie, when was the last time you saw Cheryl?
It's like I said, when she dropped me off at Newport News.
Eddie Wooten was questioned again. He told authorities that in late February, he took Cheryl to a hospital in Knoxville for a week-long treatment of stomach cancer.
I don't remember.
You don't remember the name of the hospital?
We had been told by the family that she had borrowed money and gone to other institutions for supposed treatment of a cancerous condition, and we found that not to be true. On the day in question that he claimed that he left her in Knoxville for treatments, she in fact was working in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
How could she be in Knoxville at the hospital and here in Chattanooga working at the truck stop at the same time, Eddie?
If I tell you what happened, what's gonna happen to me?
Finally, Eddie Wooten broke down. He told a tale of heartless betrayal and cold-blooded murder that horrified investigators. Next, the detail of Eddie Wooten's confession and the search for the unlikely mastermind. Maddie and Joe Harvey were missing from their small town in Tennessee. Their home had been torched. Their niece, Cheryl, had also mysteriously vanished. Cheryl's common-law husband, Eddie Wooten, was interrogated by investigators.
If I tell you what happened, what's gonna happen to me?
Eventually, Eddie broke down and gave details of the horrific crime. What follows is based on court records of his confession.
That whole week, Cheryl worked at the truck stop and I stayed at home. On Saturday, I guess, March 2nd, Cheryl came home from work and she started telling me that she needed more money. So that night, we were gonna go up to her mother's so Cheryl could pick up a paycheck.
Towards the evening hours, they stopped by a service station and purchased a gas can and filled it up with gasoline. They then went up on the mountain where her parents lived, where she went in to talk to her mother, and from there they drove to the residence of Joe and Maddie Harvey.
We gotta do it. We need the money.
We don't need it that bad.
We need it. They got more than they need, and I know where they got it. Eddie, are you gonna help me do this or not?
Wooten said that he and Cheryl were not alone that night. When they went into Joe and Maddie's house, they left their 6-week-old son and Cheryl's 5-year-old daughter in the cab of their truck.
You got the gun?
What do I need a gun for?
Because we're gonna have to kill him.
Kill him? Kill Joe and Teet?
Do you think they're just gonna hand over the money? Look, Eddie, we got no choice. Now, come on.
Eddie Wooten continued to tell investigators how it was Cheryl who planned to kill Joe and Maddie.
And I said that I didn't want to kill him, but she said that I was gonna have to help her to do it. And so I said I would.
Hey, Joe.
Oh, hi, Cheryl. How you doing?
Where's Teet?
Oh, she's in the back bedroom.
Thanks.
She came out of the back bedroom, and I shot her in the head.
According to Wooten, he and Cheryl then stuffed the bodies into the trunk of Joe and Maddie's car. Wooten followed Cheryl as she drove the Harvey's car across the Alabama state line. They stopped at the Bridgeport Ferry on the Tennessee River. Wooten said Cheryl later returned alone to Joe and Maddie's house. Cheryl stole an estimated $150,000 in cash and then tried to cover up the crime. 2 days later, Cheryl boldly returned to the crime scene again, even as investigators were searching for evidence.
She intended, obviously, for the house to burn completely, and the house did not burn. As a result of that, the gas can was left basically intact on the kitchen table.
You're not gonna believe what's on the bottom of this can. What's that? Bloody fingerprint.
And from that gas can, we were able to obtain a latent print, which definitely matched up to the known thumbprint of Cheryl Holland.
Searchers dragged the river near the Bridgeport ferry and found the Harvey's car. Joe and Maddie had been shot in the head, just as Wooten described. Eddie Wooten was arraigned on charges of first-degree murder. A warrant was immediately issued for Cheryl Holland's arrest on the same charges. Investigators began to track her movements in the days just after the killings. Holland had left her children with her mother and seemed to be traveling alone. But authorities soon learned of a mysterious man who had been apparently following her. At 9:30 p.m., 5 days after the murder, Holland was seen by a service station attendant in Greenville, Tennessee.
Hi, can I help you? I was gonna get some gas, but I gotta go.
We have a witness that saw Miss Holland talking to a male with a beard and a black leather jacket driving a red and white pickup truck. Miss Holland didn't seem to have any desire to talk to the bearded man. She left the scene, and the truck with the male in it followed behind her in the same direction.
About an hour later, an eyewitness saw Cheryl. She was using a payphone at a truck stop 12 miles from the service station. But at the time she called her family, she said that she was 2 hours from home. Later, another witness spotted 2 people talking inside Holland's pickup truck.
A man meeting the same description of the bearded person seen in the Greenville area had come to Cheryl Holland's place of business on the day before the murders, and she was seen writing this man a check. Now, whether or not that is the same man, whether or not a bearded man has any involvement in this at all, of course, would be idle speculation on our part, and we have no factual basis to conclude that he is.
Cheryl Holland was last seen at the truck stop around 11:30 p.m. that same evening.
Whether or not she planned this disappearance prior to the homicide, or whether or not the disappearance was impulsive, I don't know. But we as prosecutors and investigators do feel that she is alive and has assumed a new identity somewhere.
You're innocent until proven guilty, and I don't think they're giving her the benefit of the doubt as much as I would like for her to be. I think that Eddie went berserk, and Cheryl was just there. She didn't know what to do. If she did burn the house, it was the only way that she could figure that she could get away from Eddie. Until she could see that it was safe for her and her babies, she's just gonna have to go and try to help him. I think Eddie, or someone that he knows, has done something to her, has killed her.
Did Cheryl Holland stage her own disappearance, or did she meet with foul play at the hands of the mysterious stranger? Investigators had reached a dead end until the night that this case was broadcast on Unsolved Mysteries. Update. Rolling Wood, Texas, 1,000 miles from Tennessee. Less than an hour after our broadcast, Cheryl Holland was captured thanks to a viewer's tip. She was arrested at this convenience store where she had been working for 6 months under the assumed name Amy Forrester.
I asked her if she was Cheryl Holland, and she said yes. And that was about it. We put her in handcuffs at that point, placed her under arrest.
Employees of the store were shocked to learn of their co-workers' double life.
The first thing that got to my mind, no, that can't be her. Not Amy. The only thing she said last night, she said, I'm sorry. I got myself into a mess, and I will get myself out of it, you know.
Just 4 days later, Holland was returned to Tennessee to face charges of first-degree murder. Both she and Edward Wooten were each convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. They will not be eligible for parole until the year 2022. Next, you can't see it, smell it, touch it, or feel it, but thousands of people around the world are tormented by this mysterious sound. Imagine hearing this sound every day, everywhere you go. In no fewer than 10 countries on 5 different continents, over 1,000 people have reported hearing a similar low-frequency hum, and no one knows what's causing it.
The thing I noticed about it was it didn't change. The sound didn't change, like it was getting closer or further away or slowing down or speeding up. It was just a steady droning sound.
There is a little bit of a whine somewhere in the background here, and it's kind of like the air is sizzling.
I've been hearing the hum for about 5 years. It sounds like a diesel engine running parked away, but yet it has a physical effect. It seems to make a sound resonance in our sternum and our thorax area. It causes a vibration in the temporal lobe and actually causes ear pain at times and pain on the earlobes.
Hal Rudianen was living on Michigan's Upper Peninsula when he first heard the hum. It all began while he was studying for a trade school entrance exam.
I noticed it a few times before I was studying, but thinking that it was a motor, it wouldn't bother me that much. But then I noticed it affecting how I could focus and how I could concentrate. That's when it really started agitating me. So I was able to ignore it maybe for the first month or two. But after a while, when I got closer to the deadline of this entrance exam, I started noticing this thing is really affecting how I'm studying. It's really affecting my thought process and how I'm taking in information. And it got to where I couldn't tolerate it anymore, and I had to know what it was.
Before long, Hal became obsessed. He set out on an exhausting search.
The first few nights I went out looking for it, I went to the natural places that you would think a hum was coming from. The sewage pumping stations, the airport, the ventilation systems on top of Michigan Tech University, any place that would generate a sound. Finally, I was driving like 100 miles a night. No matter where I went, the intensity was always the same.
Okay, I have a tuning fork, and I'm just going to sort of get an idea of how well your ears line up with each other. So
Unsolved Mysteries brought Hal to Los Angeles to be tested by Dr. Eugene Flom, one of the nation's leading ear, nose, and throat specialists.
Where do you hear it?
Airplane.
Airplane.
Cowboy.
Cowboy.
Hal was found to be suffering from some hearing loss, but there was nothing specific that might explain the bizarre hum.
From what we learn today, we can't prove one way or the other whether there are extraneous sounds in the environment or within him. Those sounds in the environment might be perceived by him differently than they really are because of things going on in his system.
I'm certain that I'm feeling something from an outside source. I'm a yoga teacher, a massage therapist, a rolfer. I've studied acupuncture. I'm very aware of the sounds that my body makes, and I know this isn't my body producing this.
Hal has tried just about everything to escape the hum, even hiding in the deep tunnels of an old abandoned copper mine near his home.
Yeah, I hear it. I thought I could get away from it down under all this rock. It's worse.
In Taos, New Mexico, Sarah Allen has been hearing the hum for 3 years.
This is a tape I developed as a simulation of the phenomenon as I experience it.
Her skill as a radio engineer enabled her to recreate the noise so that the rest of us would know exactly what it sounded like.
Kind of what it sounds like. That's what I'm going to do.
We played Sarah's tape for Winona Whitted of nearby Santa Fe, New Mexico.
That's very close. Very, very close. That's very close. It's quite a lot more pleasant than the jagged, grinding glass sensation or sound that would come through.
For Winona, 5 years of hearing a constant hum has disrupted her life. She was forced to go on disability leave from her job with the National Park Service. Today, many of those who hear the low frequency belong to an international network dedicated to finding the cause of the mysterious noise.
We call ourselves hearers, but actually, we don't really feel like we're hearing, we feel like we're sensing. And none of us, we're not protesters or we're not activists. It's not like we want to take the day off of work and study physics and electromagnetic resonance, but it's driving us nuts, and we have the support and the exchange of information that we need with each other, and that's really been helpful.
We began to keep notes, not so much a logbook of every day, because it's there every day. You write in the log, it's there today, you know, and that's about all you can say about it. What we did start noticing was the intensity increases, which seem to track international events. Mostly whenever the United States is involved militarily somewhere, the intensity seems to increase.
Some believe the hum may be caused by a U.S. Navy radio system known as ELF, short for extremely low frequency. The Navy developed ELF to better communicate with the nation's submarine fleet. The system has been in use since the late 1980s, around the same time that people in the U.S. first began to hear the hum.
I'm fairly convinced that it is military, not only because of my own research, but because of feedback I've gotten from scientists, from people in the armed forces, and other people who I can't name, but who have come forward to me and who have pretty much verified my theories, at least in principle.
More research was needed, so a team of scientists traveled to Taos to search with sophisticated sound and radiation sensing equipment. They were unable to find anything dramatic or unusual to explain the hum. They concluded that it was, quote, a bona fide scientific mystery that deserves additional inquiry.
I'm hearing the hum now, and we have days where it oscillates on different sides, and today it seems to be oscillating more on the right side of my body. I don't believe how you can't hear it.
Or is it possible that more than 1,000 people around the world are simply imagining the same thing? What's wrong with the rest of us? Are we missing something?
The ELF program came to an end in 2004. Hal was near one of the stations when it was powered down. Hal says that his ears popped, his head felt lighter, and the intrusive sound faded, but did not completely go away. And for many others, it has not changed at all.
Coming up, a hero who helped put the notorious Nightstalker behind bars has disappeared. Previously, we told you about the strange disappearance of Angelo Desideri, who owned a gift shop near Phoenix, Arizona. When Angelo failed to open his store one Monday morning, his friends called the police. His home was searched, and it appeared that Angelo had been interrupted while preparing an afternoon meal. A neighbor said that he had seen Angelo's Cadillac speed off on Sunday, the day before he disappeared.
It just appeared to be a person taller than Angelo. It wasn't like Angelo to pull out without acknowledging me.
The following Monday, 400 miles from Phoenix, his Cadillac was found on fire in a San Diego parking lot. Gasoline had been used to set the fire.
We looked in the trunk and found absolutely nothing in that trunk that would have been there other than the jack. No carpet, no padding, no spare tire. Basically, this tells us that there could have been something in the vehicle that was transported in the vehicle, and when it was taken out, they took the carpet and the padding and wrapped it all in one unit and took everything out of the vehicle, including the spare tire.
For over 8 months, investigators and friends were puzzled about the motive for Angelo's disappearance. And then the Phoenix police charged a local resident, Giuseppe Joe Callo, with 2 felony counts relating to the disappearance of Angelo Desideri. Apparently, Angelo and Callo had been involved with organized crime, and Angelo wanted out. Callo was ordered to eliminate Angelo, and he brought in a man named James Majors to do the job.
Joe Callow told us that all the information he had was told to him by James Majors. During the interview of Joe Callow, he stated that Majors went to the house, got into the house by ringing the doorbell and asking for a glass of water, then took Angelo at gunpoint and robbed the house. He was taken out of the house at that time by Majors and driven out into the desert.
Callow claims that somewhere between Phoenix and San Diego, Majors murdered Angelo, placed the body in the trunk of the Cadillac, and continued on towards San Diego.
The following morning, Majors goes to a hardware store where he purchased a pick and a shovel.
According to Callow, Majors drove down a desert back road and buried Angelo near a large tree. But until they could find a body, police could not confirm if Callow was telling the truth, and they had no case against James Majors. Update. The remains of Angelo Desideri were found by campers in California. Just as Joe Callow described, they were buried in a shallow grave near a large tree. Dental records confirmed the identity. Desideri had been shot once in the head. James Majors was not charged with Angelo's death. He had already been sentenced to death for 3 other murders.
Joe Callow was a suspect in several other killings. To avoid the death penalty, he pled guilty to arranging the murder of Angelo Desideri. Callow was given multiple life sentences for Desideri's murder and 6 other contract killings.
In the summer of 1985, Los Angeles was paralyzed by fear. A serial killer, dubbed the Nightstalker, had committed a series of brutal rapes and murders. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department assigned a 120-member task force to the case. Detectives interviewed thousands of witnesses and checked out all possible leads, but the unknown killer remained at large. And then, on August 26, 1985, an unidentified man called the task force hotline.
Detective Carrillo, can I help you?
I have some information on the Nightstalker.
What kind of information do you have?
I know he is.
Detectives felt at once that this caller's information was legitimate, and they arranged the meeting.
What about this afternoon at 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock's fine.
Alex, thank you for calling. We'll see you at 3.
Okay, bye.
Alex, why don't you have a seat over there?
That afternoon, the caller met with Detectives Gil Carrillo and Carlos Avila.
The man identified himself as Alejandro Espinoza. The individual that he wished to identify, he knew as Richard, or by a moniker that he knew on the streets as Despeinado, which translated into English means the uncombed one.
He tells me about all these burglaries he commits.
Alejandro was telling us about burglaries where Richard had told him about that coincided with the murders that we were investigating, where there had been a murder burglary.
What's he generally do with the property that he takes on the burglaries?
He takes it to this fence, and I can show you where that's at. I know where the house is at. I don't know where the address is.
That information that he had that we had not heard coming from other individuals that were calling in, and it was information that we knew that perhaps only the suspect himself or associates of the suspect might know.
Alejandro told detectives that on several occasions he had accompanied the man he knew as Richard to a house in the Echo Park area of Los Angeles. According to Espinoza, Richard entered the house alone and exchanged stolen property for cash.
Alejandro became suspicious and, as he said, had put 2 and 2 together after realizing that a lot of the property that Richard had taken on days that he had talked about doing a recent burglary, Alejandro had read in the paper that coincidentally there had been another burglary or another homicide that the quote-unquote Nightstalker had been attributed to. He finally realized that his friend, whom he knew as Richard, was, in his opinion, the Nightstalker.
3 days after their meeting with Espinoza, detectives made a positive match of a fingerprint taken from one of the Nightstalker's crime scenes with 25-year-old Richard Ramirez. Because Ramirez had a prior arrest record, there was a booking photo on file.
As soon as we got that booking photo, we then went to Alejandro out on the streets, showed him a copy of the booking photo.
Yeah, that's Richard.
You positive?
I'm positive, no doubt. That's him.
When Alejandro identified the mugshot that we displayed for him, we knew that we were talking of one and the same person, and that Richard was the man we were in fact looking for.
The following morning, a photograph of Richard Ramirez was printed on the front page of every major newspaper in Los Angeles. Within hours, he was chased down and captured by a group of angry citizens after he tried to steal a car. By noon, he was in police custody. The Nightstalker's 7-month reign of terror had finally come to an end. Richard Ramirez was convicted on 43 felony charges, including 13 counts of first-degree murder. 6 weeks later, Ramirez was sentenced to death.
Big deal. Death always went with the territories. I'll see you in Disneyland.
Alejandro Espinosa is entitled to more than $6,000 for the vital information he provided authorities, but he has not come forward to claim his reward.
Being a street person, Alejandro himself would know that he would be labeled as an informant, which is not well thought of down in the streets of any city. There was a certain degree of danger.
At the time, Alejandro Espinosa was 26 years old, and according to police, he may have had a wife and a young son.